Hello, I'm Caroline Criado Perez and I'm here on the top floor of Waterstones Piccadilly, and as you can see I'm going to have to walk even further up to get to the ladies' toilet. I'm the author of Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, and actually ladies' toilets are one of the things that I talk about. Now we're all used to seeing women in a massive line trailing around the corner, particularly at the interval in the cinema or the theatre. Any time that women want to go to the loo, it's a massive bun fight to get there before everyone else, because otherwise you'll be waiting there in line for 10 minutes. And a lot of people think that that's because women are just in there chatting and putting on makeup. Well, a lot of men think that, obviously women don't think that. But the real reason is far more interesting than that. It is to do with male bias in toilet design. So you might think that it would be equitable and fair to have 50-50 floor space for men and women. But the reality is, if you have 50-50 floor space, men get double the amount of provision because they have urinals. Women can't tend to use urinals because we don't tend to have penises. But it's not just that, it's also that women take longer, 2.3 times longer than men, for a variety of reasons. It'll be things like more complicated clothing, it'll be things like, we have to actually take our clothing off and get down on the loo. Women are also more likely to be with children or with elderly people or with disabled people. They're also more likely to be elderly and disabled. So for all those reasons, we need more than 50% floor space. Of course, that's all incredibly annoying and unfair, but it actually gets a lot worse than that. In fact, according to the UN, 1 in 3 women worldwide lack access to a safe toilet. And women and girls spend collectively 97 billion hours every year finding a safe space to relieve themselves. And it's actually incredibly important that women have a safe place to relieve themselves, because a 2016 study in India found that women who didn't and had to use fields were twice as likely to face non-partner sexual violence as women who had an indoor toilet. So we've come down to the 4th floor. We're looking out over Piccadilly, one of London's busiest streets, cars and buses rushing by, and most of us will use some form of transport every day. But what a lot of people don't realise is that it's a very different business for a woman to be travelling in a car than it is for a man to be travelling in a car. So men are more likely to be in a crash and therefore more likely to be injured overall. But if a woman is in a crash, she is 47% more likely to be seriously injured and 17% more likely to die. And this is all because of how the car is designed and for whom. Essentially, for decades, we have used a 50th percentile male crash test dummy. And that means that the whole car is set up for women to be out of position drivers. We sit forward, too far forward, in order to see over the dash and to reach the pedals with our feet, kind of important for driving. The seats aren't designed for either our height or our weight or our muscle distribution. So we're basically doing it all wrong, and as a result, we're much more likely to be injured. So you might think, well, maybe women should use public transport. Well, not so lucky there either. It turns out in London, a fifth of women, in fact, have been sexually assaulted on buses and tubes, and 90% of them didn't report it. Also, there's the problem that public transport isn't really designed in a way that accounts for women's care work, and that's partly because of how we collect data. So we collect data on paid employment and educational purposes as 2 blocks. So they come out as huge amounts of travel that is done, and those are called compulsory mobility. But the kind of trips that women have to do in addition to their paid work, taking the kids to school, taking an elderly relative to work, picking up the groceries, all the things that actually have to get done for life to carry on, are not seen as compulsory mobility. They're seen as leisure, and they are divided into lots of different little blocks. So it looks like there's not really that much of it going on, but actually, when you put it all together, it turns out it's the single biggest reason for travel that women do, and it's as big as employment. In fact, even the device that you're probably using to watch this on, your mobile phone, that's designed to fit into men's hands rather than women's hands. The average smartphone is now 5.5 inches, which is too big for the average woman to use comfortably one-handed. And sometimes you have to use it one-handed if you're on the tube or you're carrying shopping or you're with your kid. So on this short journey through Waterstones, I've shared just a few of the statistics that I uncovered in my book, but there are so many more, from heart attack symptoms all the way through to occupational health. Women are being inconvenienced and women are dying as a result of the male bias in data. So I hope you'll pick up a copy of my book, Invisible Women, and whether you're a man or a woman, it'll change the way you see the world.